Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Voices in My Head with Basil Sands, where he talks about audiobooks and the audiobook industry and the voice-over stuff and things like that. And today we have a special guest. I say special 2 times because we got 2 guests, and that's special. We never done that before. And it is, of all people, Dan Lenard and George Whittam of VoiceOver Body Shop. And they are here to talk about all the stuff that they talk about on their own podcast, except they're doing it on Basil's podcast, which is kind of cool. It's like a twofer, but times 2, or maybe is that squared? Anyway, on with the show. Over to Basil. Oh, by the way, did you guys hear that we had a 7.1 earthquake this morning at 1:30 in the morning? Oh, yeah, I heard that, all right. I heard it, and I felt it, and I jiggled it, and I thought it was just Gerald snoring, but it wasn't. No, it was a big earthquake. But we're all alive and okay, so nobody got to worry about us. Okay, on with the show again. Yeah, on with the show. Here you go, Basil. Take the mic.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode 21. That's 21 of Voices in My Head, the podcast where we talk about audiobooks, the audiobook industry, and everything related to it, and some things not related to it, as the conversation may go. Today I have 2 special guests. You guys get, as what my Canadian neighbors say, a twofer today. We're going to have Dan Lenard and George Whittam on the show with us today. As you can see, their lovely mugs right there on the screen with me, all side by side. And we're going to share some time and chat about the audiobook industry and audio production in general. I think is kind of the way it'll go with these guys because they are the techno masters. They are the demigods. They're like Hercules and Apollo kind of thing going on here. Well, actually, that was a demigod and a human. But anyway, it's something like that. They're like the supernatural guys of this. And, that's what we're going to talk about today. So, howdy, fellas. Welcome.
Hi there. Speaking of mythology.
We're all on the West Coast. Well, they're on the West Coast. I'm in Alaska. So, this is one of those opportunities where I get to interview people in the same time zone as me. So they're not looking exhausted or I'm not looking hungover this time. So, it's really good to be able to do this in close proximity. And that proximity is due to the fact that Dan recently became a West Coaster, as I understand.
Yep.
Having traversed the continental divide recently. Dan, what brought you to the idea of leaving New York and coming to California?
Well, there was a 5-fold reason for it. And voiceover was only 2 and 3. My younger son is a very gifted animator, and also has Asperger's, and he's enrolled in an amazing school in Sherman Oaks called Exceptional Minds, which is an animation, 3D graphics, and special effects studio in Sherman Oaks, which is basically Hollywood. That teaches people with autistic spectrum disorders, trains them and certifies them in all of these technologies, and it's a working studio. So they are actually involved in the industry and are being trained by people in the industry to get jobs in the industry. Wow. And it's an amazing opportunity for him. And instead of being at our old home in Buffalo, he's now having his stuff looked at by people at Sony and Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, and speaking with the president and the producers there. And he's learning the business and is being specially trained to fill the needs that are needed in that industry. Voiceover, I'm a professional voice actor and have been for about upwards, I keep thinking of 30 years. Well, no, it's been 10 years since I first started thinking about it, so it's been closer to 40 years. And this is the center of the voiceover universe here. More classes here, more representation, higher paying work, that sort of thing.
Wow.
And I'm a home studio consultant like George, and there are a lot more people here who have home studios and are in the business than there are back in Buffalo. And number 4 was my mother lives not far from here, and she's 85. And number 5 is February, January, and March.
I can identify with that.
Yeah.
I think you guys in Buffalo see a lot more snow than we do here.
Oh, yeah. See how I've reduced that story, George?
You summarized it pretty well.
Well, that's excellent. Now, George, you've been in L.A. the whole time, or around that time? Are you originally from California?
I moved out here 12 years ago, almost exactly 12 years ago, and I was in Philadelphia before that. I grew up in Westchester, Pennsylvania, southeast Pennsylvania, and I went to school at Virginia Tech.
Okay.
So I spent most of my life, though, in Pennsylvania until I moved out here 12 years ago, and now live in the last for the last 5 years in Santa Monica, California. But I've been working in the voiceover field for about 10 years or so. So I'm still a youngin' in terms of
You're a
in
kid.
relation to Dan, that's for sure.
Now, do you do voice acting as well as the technical side?
No, I do not. I'm strictly a techie, a geek, if you want to say that. I help people set up studios, tech support, train, anything technical. I don't coach voice acting, but just the technical side. And I do webinars, and I design studios from the ground up, and I blog, and I go to any voiceover related conferences and events out there and cover them. Like I'm going to be at the NAMM show next week here in Anaheim, which is a big show for the music industry. That I'll just be there to cover audio gear.
What does NAMM stand for?
That's the North American Music Merchants or something, or National Association of Music Merchants. It's
cool.
Music stores go there to shop for what they're going to sell for the next year.
Oh.
So they have one entire hall dedicated to nothing but pro audio, microphones, preamps, all that fun stuff. So I go to that every year and cover that. And NAB in Vegas, another big show. So yeah, anything I can do to get out there and be seen, just like we do on our VOBS show, I'm out there, getting out there and seeing people and rubbing elbows.
Now, speaking of VOBS, Voiceover Body Shop, your podcast, your video that you guys do every Monday night, which is a fun, excellent place to hang out and watch, learn some information, and chat with other people in the chat room. How did that come about? I mean, you guys are disparate locations, disparate ages, different sides of the industry. How did VOBS come into existence?
Well, it started, George and I met in 2008 at a voice conference in Century City here in Los Angeles. And we won't get into too much of the story, but essentially we learned to collaborate on how to make things a little more understandable for beginners, because these conferences are generally inhabited by a lot of beginners.
Right.
And we became friends after that conference, and we would call each other and consult on cases. And
we just got tired of seeing people do things the hard way.
Yeah, really,
for so long, getting bad information. We'd watch the conversations going on in the forums, and we'd go, "What are these people thinking?"
Yeah.
We would start talking about this on Skype, and we were like, "I wonder if people would want to watch this." Like car talk.
Yeah,
we could do a car talk for voiceover.
Yeah, that is kind of what it feels like too. I mean, it's a good show.
Well, that was the original intent, and because I think one afternoon we called each other, and I said, "Hey, did you watch Car Talk? Listen to Car Talk this morning?" He goes, "Yeah, that was really funny." And we're like, "Yeah, we should do it like Car Talk." So we formed it like that. We also noticed when we would be at conferences that when he and I would start to talk, that these people would start to gather around our table and listen to us talk geek talk. Not that we thought it was geek talk. I mean, to them, it's probably geek talk.
Oh, yeah.
So we came up with the concept that when Dan and George start talking, shop, people listen, and they do. And
so you're like the H&R Block of the audio industry.
Exactly.
There you
go. Actually, I think it was Smith Barney, but we won't get into that.
Oh, okay, whatever it was.
Or E.F. No, it was E.F.
Hutton.
E.F. Hutton.
That was the one.
When E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. Well, when we talk, people listen to us because we did have very different views on voiceover technology. George was working with a lot of high-end clients and still is in Hollywood, people who do heavy-duty promo work and have very specific requirements. And I was working with a lot of people who were beginners. And we came to a very similar philosophy of keeping things very, very simple. And started to express that. And then we decided, well, let's do a web show about it. We had done a couple of webinars together, right, that were a lot of fun to do. And then we had to figure out, how are we going to do this as a TV show, as a webcast? And George will tell you what we went through to do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that what
it
you
was
do?
quite a technical hurdle to make the show happen, which is that's what I thrive at doing.
Mm.
I love solving technical challenges,
Mm.
and we were trying to decide, was it going to be an audio show or a radio show or a TV show?
Mm.
And it ended up being a video show, because by the time we figured out how to do the radio side of it, or the audio side of it, it was easy enough to just turn on the cameras and make it video.
There you go. Yeah.
And the platforms to do live shows on the web were mostly video centric, weirdly enough, like Ustream and things like that. Everything's based around video, not so much audio.
Right.
So it just made sense. And then my idea being, I figured I'd be the one having to deal with the post on the show. So I was like, let's just do it live. I don't want to have to do any post.
Hit record, go live.
And it's over. It's over. Warts and all.
Yeah.
And anybody who watches the show knows there's warts. We got the tagline every week. It's Apollo 13, because for a pretty long time there was a technical issue or two midway through the show that would either take us off air or just cause some kind of a total calamity, and we would just keep on going.
We would never panic, and that's really what it's all about. I'm an experienced broadcaster. George was experienced in broadcasting, and it's a matter of stuff happens. What are you going to do?
Right.
Fix it. People are patient. People want to watch the show. They want to hear what we have, and they'll wait.
They want to see the wreck at the NASCAR, and then the guy actually get out and go, "I'm all right.
I'm okay."
And they're like, "Yay!"
Running down the track in his underwear.
Exactly. Flaming. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can identify with that. In this I've thought about doing this show live a couple of times, but those same kind of technical issues, when you got to reboot the PC twice during the middle of a recording, which, as a warning, that happened on the last show with PJ Auckland, and I had to do a lot of editing.
Yep.
And,
yeah, it's not fun. And originally, I was in Buffalo. We did the show apart for over 4 years, and it was all done on Skype and then Zoom, and sort of like what you're seeing right now. And then because I came out to California and found this amazing studio that was actually built into the garage of the house we purchased in Sherman Oaks, it now doubles as a voiceover studio and a television studio. And it's been a really nice thing, because we can now have a live audience, and our guests are really face to face most of the time, where I get to interview them right up close, and it's a lot more intimate and a lot more fun, and I think the audience is really enjoying that a lot more. And it's a little more challenging, but because there's a lot of physical things we have to do, but that's what we do, and we've gotten good at it.
More engaging to be together physically and to have an audience there sometimes, but the guests to be there with us as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more engaging and spontaneous, and it's definitely more fun. More work, but it's worth it because it's more fun.
Oh yeah.
It's easier to throw things at each other. So
there you go. When you get that interaction, that physical interaction with each other, I remember doing the same thing in radio and having the guests sit right next to me and having the producer on the other side of the glass, and we could all make eyes at each other and time things a little bit, and it just makes not that making eyes with each other in a flirtatious way. Audience, don't get that pictured in your mind.
Well, it depends on who the guest was, too.
That's true. That is very true. And the audience would never know until they heard.
There's some cute ladies in voiceover.
There are. Certainly
not so much in talk radio.
Maybe not.
Yeah. So you guys focus in different areas. Now, Dan, you're mostly doing voiceover for like commercial voiceover, right?
It's everything.
And audiobooks as well?
I did audiobooks I did about 40 titles in audiobooks, and I'm waiting for some changes in the audiobook industry, and I'll probably go back and do it again. It's one of those things where, producing them on your own is not easy. It's a lot of work. One of the things that we do is we try to make, as George said, make things simpler for people. We tend to think that people make it far too complicated for themselves. That, they think the technology is going to be what drives what they do, when in reality, what drives what you do is between your ears and how it relates to your vocal cords and then out. The rest of it is all very, very simple. And setting things up once, setting it and forgetting it is our philosophy of how to get things done. But you have to be able to do that setup, which is what George does. But I've done commercials, I've done audiobooks, I've done my real area specialty is e-learning, which is a huge area of voiceover today. Audiobooks is really a sort of a separate branch. The technology is all the same for the most part. There's slightly different techniques in there, and so I've done a lot, and a lot of the people who I talk to when I consult on building their home studios, a lot of it has been audiobooks lately.
And that what kind of recommendations do you guys have for folks that are doing the home studios? Setting them up. I mean, we got people that range from working in a closet. They got a closet with accordion doors that they just open up and put a blanket over their head and start recording, all the way to people who have a $5,000 to $10,000 whisper room or something like that, or studio bricks. Where do you guys? How do you advise people that are getting started in this business, and as far as their setup, as far as what do they do to get started and get going and sound professional right out of the chute?
You go first, Hugh.
Okay. Well, these days you can get incredibly good sounding recordings with very minimal equipment. And we all know that audiobook production, or recording as an audiobook narrator, is not a quick way to cash. So there's no good reason to overly invest in your equipment. Especially in a whisper room or something like that, because the cost of those products is pretty prohibitive unless you happen to have startup money, and you're treating this like a business, and you have a plan, and you want to invest so much money, and if you need something like that, then it's knowing what you need. I think that's the hard part. And you can get into the forum discussions, and you can go round and round and round, and you can get a ton of advice, and then you have to sift through it all and figure out which of that advice is really, really relevant to you. But basically, if someone comes to someone like Dan or myself, we're going to give you, like in that first hour, you're going to have an incredibly focused list of equipment and suggestions that are going to work for your particular situation. So if someone does have a closet that they can go inside and it's already full of clothes, they already have a space that's pretty much free of echo or reverberation, then we're going to say go in there. And that's a good place to start. We're always going to start with the path of least resistance.
Right.
We're not going to take a bathroom and try to convert a bathroom because it's a tile echoey mess.
We've seen it.
Yeah, we've seen it done, but we're not going to go. We're going to go somewhere that's logical. I always start by asking somebody, have you thought about where in your home you might want to do this? And I get some, ideas about what they're looking at in terms of their space. And then I say, yeah, that sounds like that could work real well. Or maybe there's something else you hadn't considered in the home that you could use that's going to be better for you.
Right. Yeah, that I started off in a walk-in closet, and all the clothes and pillows, and it sounded like a booth, except when my family would flush the toilet.
Yes.
And the pipe ran right through the wall where my microphone was, so I'd have to stop until the toilet refilled and then get going again. So
and that's actually part of what we try to teach people is that you're not in an expensive studio, nor do you really need an expensive studio. I mean, if you are of an income level and an experience level where you are constantly working and making a very good living, yes, then you might invest in the technologies of, say, a booth, either custom built or purchased, of which there are many manufacturers, in order to do this work. But I'm sure Basil, that it's a lonely business, and you don't want to spend hours and hours and hours in a cube. That it's nice to be in your home and being able to get around and stuff.
Right.
And also the idea of patience. That even though you're on a deadline, even though you have to get something done, sometimes those deadlines are not written in concrete. They're
right.
You've got to get something done. I like to say, if you have the choice between someone flushing a toilet or your neighbor cutting his grass or in Alaska, moving the snow around, because that was what it was like in Buffalo too.
Right.
And snowblowers can be pretty loud.
Mm.
You can either spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a booth, or you can wait till the toilet refills or the person stops using whatever outdoor things, leaf blowers, snow blowers, lawnmowers, until they're done and move on. And you're going to edit it together anyway at the end, so you just have a long space. Takes you a chance to look at your copy, see what's there, maybe think about it a little bit, and when the sound goes away, back to it.
Off you go.
And it's far less expensive and actually more effective.
I'm a big fan of killing the sound at the source.
Yeah.
That might mean bribing the gardener. That might mean putting a remote power switch on the aquarium or on the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or here's an idea, shutting off the water to the toilet so that it can't even turn on. So it might get a little gross.
Kids don't think about that, and they leave that in there, and that's going to fester.
Kick your kids out of the house.
Desperate times calls for desperate measures.
Now, you were talking about in the forums and stuff, people talking about equipment and talking about how to set up. What are some of the most common questions or types of questions that you see that crop up every time that, there's maybe 1,000 instances of this particular conversation on Facebook or in a blog somewhere? What do you see as some of the most common things that people ask?
1, 2, 3. What's the best microphone for voiceover? Yeah. That's number one. We've done entire webinars on this one. We've done mic shootouts and stuff like that. And the advice on the internet is, well, here's the best way to put it. And here's how we generally tell people. When you throw that question out onto the internet or onto a chat room or a forum somewhere, people will give you an answer. I use this, I use that, it's great. Well, the problem is that most of these people only have experience with one studio, and that's their own. Every studio is different. All the construction is always different. People's voices are different. Their volumes are just a little bit different. The timbre might be a little bit different. Their voice modulates at slightly different frequencies. That's what makes us each unique, which is really the big selling point in voiceover and narration and all those sorts of things. So there isn't necessarily one mic that's going to be the best for anything in particular. Mm-hmm. I once did a video where we were talking about microphone choice, and it starts off with me in a supermarket and coming up to the checkout line and looking into the candy aisle that's next to the checkout cashier, and I'm like, this is the selection of microphones for voiceover. You want mint chocolate chip, you want bubblegum flavored. They're all sorts of microphones, and it really comes down to what's the best microphone. Generally, anything over $200, $250 is going to probably suffice. And then if you're doing that, then the microphone you have is the best microphone is probably the one you have, because that's the sound that you create in the acoustic environment in which you have created, and to remain consistent, that microphone is going to do just fine. Any standard studio large diaphragm condenser microphone is going to be great, especially for audiobooks. It comes down to more about technique,
right?
Mic placement, and the acoustics of the room you're in, because all of these microphones, they're all very quiet, and they do a very good job of picking up your voice.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little variation from mic to mic these days. We just did a shootout on my Whittam's World blog, and I had Dan. We went into Dan's studio, best place I could find to do it, and we recorded 10 different microphones side by side, one at a time in the same place, placed the same way. Dan addressing the microphones at 2 different distances, but we tried very hard to be consistent. And it's a great exercise for listeners to realize how little of a difference there really is between all of these different microphones. They're very subtle. I like to call it shades of mauve. How many different shades of mauve are you concerned of picking between? Because after a while, it sort of becomes that way. There are some mics that have a very unique tonal quality or color or character. Those are usually ribbon microphones or tube microphones. Sometimes they're designed to have a vintage sound of bygone era.
Right.
You know, but if you're using any of the common condenser large diaphragm mics, like Dan said, they're all within a 5% variation of each other in terms of sound. They're not all that different from each other. I think at the lowest end, they're really. I've heard microphone samples from people in the sub $100 range that impressed me. MXL 990, I think, was one. Audio Technica 2020 that comes in usually around $99.
Wow.
You can find mics that sound really good as long as you use them correctly and put them in the right space. They can sound quite surprisingly good.
So you're saying that that's the key is not the mic, it's the space, the treatment, the
95% of the quality of your audio. I mean, we keep trying to really gauge what is the actual percentage because there's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
But it's 90%.
Definitely the topmost.
Is the acoustical signature of your room, and that has to do with having very little reflection.
Right.
You know, you're dealing with two different things. You're dealing with noise, transmission into the space in which you're recording, and then the sound that you're creating that's bouncing off the walls and going back to the microphone. And you want to be able to, minimize both of those. So it's a challenge, but there are techniques to do it. And a closet full of clothes is, certainly the least expensive if you have that closet and a lot of clothes. And in Alaska, cripes, you got all parkas there.
Oh yeah, we got parkas, big blankets, my gun safe.
That would be a first. Nobody yet has said, I'm using my gun safe as a booth.
I was
quiet in there, though.
Recording well and secure.
Yeah, yeah. But what we do is we really, I mean, when we talk to people and when we consult with people individually, we ask a lot of questions. We have to find out what specifically it is that you're trying to do. If it's audiobooks, we know what the requirements are for audiobooks. Right. They want quiet space. It doesn't have to be perfect, but they want a space that's going to be, minimal reflection and certainly very little noise floor, very little exterior noise. And, and that keeping the noise out is probably a bigger challenge than reducing the reflection, because the reflection, as George will probably talk about, has to do with acoustical treatment. And that's a science in itself. When you look at the equations, you go, we bet these equations work. But we decide by what our ears tend to tell us.
Right, right. So what would you, on a range from egg cartons to, multi-$1,000 foam blocks in the corners of the room and so on, where do you see most people, where do you recommend the treatments to, I guess, what range should people be looking at, or how do you treat a room?
It depends on the size of the room a lot. If it's a small closet, if you're starting from scratch with nothing in a small closet or any small space, anything less than 8 by 8 feet or something, you're going to have a lot of bass resonance or bass buildup. That's just going to be, it gets out of control really fast. So then you have to bass trap. We call it bass trap, the bass resonance. That's why clothing in a closet works so great, because they're thick and dense and heavy, and they do an awesome job of bass trapping. So if you don't have that, you have to recreate that by adding thick, heavy materials, and you can get bass trap specific products like Lenard bass traps.
Lenrd.
Yeah, Lenrd bass traps from Auralex, for example, that do an incredibly effective job of knocking down those bass resonances. And you're probably thinking, well, bass, I'm not a bass singer. I don't sound like a bass guitar. But it's still, we're talking about bass to mid bass, kind of up into the range of your voice where you have the most energy.
Right.
About 100 hertz and between
100 to 100, 250 in that range. There's a lot of bass buildup in there, and these products will help kill that for you. And so a small room, that's one of the biggies that people will often overlook. Then if you just cover the rest of the surfaces with anything absorbing, sound blankets, moving blankets. If you have foam, that's fine, but I find the blankets are way easier to put up and take down and cover huge surfaces for a minimal amount of money.
Right.
I tend to be my favorite way to go.
Yeah. Now, and if you listen now, this particular studio that I have here in Sherman Oaks, this is two distinct rooms. This is my main office, but it's also been acoustically treated. So when I listen back to audio, you're going to hear it in the right, in a neutral space, and it's not creating a lot of extra noise or reflection. Now, if I go back into my actual booth, which requires me to go change my microphone input here, which I will now do.
That's funny. You got closer.
Did I?
Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, here, let me turn on the light in there, and then we can actually see what's going on. Move the camera a little bit over to that spot so you can see the studio over there. So, in the booth here, this place is a fortress. This is my mic is set here. This room has been acoustically treated, and there's no noise coming in, and there's very little reflection in here, and you can hear the difference in the size of the room.
Yeah, it's an audible difference in the sound between the two spaces.
Yeah. Small rooms have a distinctly different sound from big rooms, and there's no one that's right or wrong. But bigger rooms have a more natural sound because we're more familiar with what a large room sounds like because it's more. Right. We normally speak in a large room. We don't normally have conversations in closets.
Yeah, I don't invite too many people in my 4x5 booth here.
Right. So
and when they are,
rooms,
they're very intimate.
Right. That's intimate. Yeah. So bigger rooms sound more natural, and then you just have to knock down the echo. But the difficulty then is the amount of noise that comes in. And Dan's space, fortunately, was pretty well soundproofed by the person that converted it. So, but if he wants really quiet, he goes back into that ISO booth, which is like another room within the room, and it gets even quieter back there. It's really quiet in there.
Nice. So you could, do like criminal stuff in there, and no one would hear the screams.
No,
there's been nights when we've thought about it.
If there's someone in that booth back there and they're screaming, I do not think you'll hear it outside the building. I don't think it's possible. No. The only thing that creeps in there are like low-flying choppers, like helicopters. They are like the world's most difficult thing to stop.
That's something that, as far as extraneous noise, here in Alaska, up until the early 90s, we actually had more private airplanes than cars.
I've heard that. It's amazing.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, they are everywhere. And especially in hunting season in the fall, you hear this constant, every 5 minutes, there's a Piper Cub or a beaver or de Havilland beaver flying over my house.
Oh yeah, those things are loud. I've been up in Vancouver, and you hear these float planes, and you can hear them across the
and they're not very
city.
Fast, so they take a while.
It takes a long time.
You can hear them from 30 miles away, and
yeah.
So how do you treat that? I mean, half the time I just decide, okay, September, which is our primary hunting month, September I'm not going to take any contracts. I'm going to take a month off and work on my books instead. And just because all day until 9 o'clock at night, there's an airplane flying over every 15 minutes. What can you do to try to break up that particular sound or a sound like that?
It's costly and or very laborious because you have to build an extremely heavy, dense structure inside your existing home. You need a room in a room.
Right.
And it has to be completely decoupled from the outside. So in other words, you can't just screw things to the existing walls.
Right.
Or glue stuff to the walls that are already there because the sound of the airplane is so much energy. It doesn't just pass through the wall, directly through. It also resonates the entire structure.
Right.
The whole building. Right. So it's shaking everything. So anything attached to that structure then gets transferred into the booth. Right. So you have to build something completely independent with its own walls, ceiling, and floor, and all 6 surfaces have to be built to the same degree of isolation, which is very dense, heavy material on the outside, drywall, whatever, an airspace with insulation, and then another layer of heavy, dense material, drywall. We like this stuff called green glue. It slathers on between 2 layers of drywall, and that adds another amount of noise reduction. All these different things sandwiched together work together to create this envelope around you that can stop a lot of sound. That's a lot of noise. Not 100%, but 95 to 98% of the noise.
Which will be enough to get you down to a noise floor that is usable. And
Right.
building these yourself is a major project that, unless you are very handy and can follow instructions and have a lot of time on your hands, it's not easy. And if you're going to try and build one into your home, you have to have a contractor do it. And we have found that most contractors don't know how.
Yeah.
So it's best probably to if you're going to get a booth, probably best to purchase a prefabricated one, and even those can't be so easy to put together.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them
But
are
I
better than
can
others.
identify with it. I mean, I left that closet and I built a booth in my garage that is, like you said, is separated from all the structures. It's on its own. It's on rubber wheels on the bottom, so it's several inches off the floor. So
Good.
I don't get the snow scrapers vibrating the bottom of it anymore. And but still, those daggum airplanes.
Yeah.
So maybe I got to put another layer of sheetrock on the outside of this.
But yeah, you could put another. You could do the green glue sheetrock sandwich all the way around the outside of the booth. You know, that'd be one thing you could do. If most of the noise is coming through the ceiling, I've heard of people getting horse stall mats, which are super heavy.
Huh.
I mean, these things are really heavy. Like
Just lay that on the ceiling?
1-inch thick rubber mats that weigh like 150 pounds.
Oh.
And you and a couple people to lift it up and put it on the roof. I've heard of people doing that.
Is that like the mass-loaded vinyl? Because like in mine, I
way
layered
thicker.
the thing with it.
Yeah, it's way thicker than that
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
Horse stall mats are for horses to stand on. They're very thick and extremely strong and very heavy. But I've heard of that.
Interesting. That is very interesting. I might have to look into that. So add yet more, test my carpentry skills by adding another 150 pounds on the top of this booth and see if I live.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Might want to try build a couple of granite Roman columns around that.
There you go.
I mean, for those that really want to do a studio right and they have a contractor they trust, I do consult folks from afar as well. I have a project that's been going on for the last year in Toronto. And, you know, I can consult from afar. You just have to have somebody that's going to be open to listen and take suggestion.
Right.
That sometimes contractors, and, you know, these are skilled professionals, but they can feel like sometimes either they don't want to take a lot of direction from this designer guy in LA, or they feel like I've done one of these before, I know what I'm doing, and then they might take shortcuts. And boy, any little shortcut can really short out the isolation and ruin a pretty expensive construction project.
Wow. Yeah, that's I can see that making a big difference. And you know, you ruin that project, and it also ruins your product. And
yeah.
Wow. So what is one big piece of advice that you would have for folks getting into the industry? What, you know, in addition to the things that we've already said, or maybe culled from what we've already said, what's like a one sentence piece of advice that you might give to people breaking in?
Oh boy. Well, there's, you know, it's really a little bit more complex than that. If we're talking strictly audiobooks, or if you're talking straight voiceover, I have generally found the technology is not that difficult. It's important to talk to somebody who is, you know, who knows what they're talking about, like George or myself, and really get a professional consultation and not necessarily go into the chat rooms and find all this information to build it. But I have found the best thing you can do is to work with a great coach who's going to work on your vocal technique and your narration technique and get you ready to be in this business, not just to try and start doing it. You can't just cut a demo and then hope that that's gonna carry the day. You've got to be trained to do what you do. This is not a pickup game type of profession. You're not selling pencils on a corner here. You're learning how to be a professional narrator. And if you want to do it as a hobby, go for it. If you want to do it as a serious profession, talk to a serious professional who is committed to making you successful and has a track record of helping other people be successful.
Yeah, what Dan said. If you're looking at the purely technical side of things, I would say, I know this isn't the answer people want to hear, but talk to a trusted professional, because they're going to they're going to take a little bit of your money for their time in the grand scheme of things, but it's going to save them huge amounts of frustration and wasted money down the long run.
Right.
We have spent the years being in the forums, learning from other people, watching people do it wrong, helping people fix what they've done wrong, doing it wrong ourselves. We've done all that. So to work with one of us is a huge, huge shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
If you just don't have the budget, you might want to evaluate whether you want to be starting a new business.
Right.
If you can't make that small investment, you might want to consider this might not be the business for you right away.
Mm.
You should definitely have a little bit of savings put aside to invest back into it.
Right.
Coaching aside, I mean, I have to assume at this point you've had the coaching. If you haven't, then it's like a hobby. It's just now you're just making a fun hobby that you're throwing money into, like
Right.
a boat. You're building a boat.
And you're going
don't
to sea with it. You better hope it works.
Right.
don't build a boat if you don't need one.
A wood boat, yeah.
Yeah. So that would be my advice. But it's definitely, if you're going to rank, if you want to have some really concrete information, it's acoustics, then mic placement, then microphone choice. Everything else at that point is tertiary, is quaternary. Is that the word? Is fourth or fifth from there on down. Everything else,
area.
yeah, everything else is definitely far secondary to those top three things.
Yeah, and we also recommend that people use a Mac. It's. I mean, if you have a PC and it's up to date and stuff like that, it's pretty good. But we have found that Macs for creative professionals, you plug them in and they work and they last longer.
Yeah, I found that it's a support thing. I mean, we've supported so many folks, and the people on average that have the most mind-numbingly frustrating problems are often on Windows. And it's not because of Windows OS. It's because of Windows OS and the hardware are two different vendors.
Right.
And the hardware can be made by anybody and everybody. It's an amalgamation of parts. And unless you're buying something that's going to have a support contract with it, which I do recommend generally, unless you're already a hobbyist and you built your own PC, then have fun.
Right.
But otherwise, if you're going to go PC, make sure you buy something with a good warranty, with good support, because that's what when people say you pay an Apple tax, I mean that's kind of what you're paying for. You're paying for really good back-end support, and you're paying for a software, the OS, and hardware that are designed to fit together perfectly, and that's what makes them, I think, so much more reliable and pain-free to use. So if someone's looking at buying a new PC for $500, consider buying a used MacBook Pro or MacBook Air or a Mac Mini for that same $500. I really tend to steer people that direction.
As you guys talk about this, my mind is whirling because I've been a PC technician for 25 years. All my stuff has been PC, whether it's Windows or Linux, it's all been on a PC. Linux usually works a lot smoother than Windows, but isn't compatible with as much stuff.
Yeah.
So right now I'm on a Windows 10 PC, and just 3 days ago, my PreSonus audio box suddenly said, I don't recognize myself, and quit working. Could not reload the drivers. So I put my old M Audio on, which is what I got now. Overnight but the sound is different. I'm in the middle of a very long book, and the sound is just enough different that it's irritating me. And so I overnighted a new audio box over here so I could get the same sound. It's doing the same thing right out of the boxes. And I'm like, oh crap. So as I'm going through, and I built my own PC. It's a high-end PC.
Yeah.
But now I'm at that point where I'm like, okay, maybe I need to figure out this Mac thing because I'm just not like this.
Well, at a certain point, you have to decide where do you want to spend your time and your energy.
Yeah.
Like I used to build my own PCs, and I used to do PC gaming. I'd spend half the time at the gaming parties, like literally bring our PC, spend half the time at the gaming parties fixing problems, debugging software, and not having a lot of fun getting to play games. And I know that all those things that's evolved, but I kind of look at it the same way. Like, do you want to be a hobbyist, and is that the way you want to spend your time, or do you want to spend your time in the art of voice acting?
Yeah.
At a certain point, you just have to let that thing go. That I'm a PCIT expert thing go. I mean, if you have it down and you have a dialed system, great, stick with it.
Right.
And that would be another point. Just don't upgrade anything. Like
Yeah.
once you have a system that's working for you, lock that thing in time, and just I don't care Windows or Mac. Mac is not immune to this stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the newest El Capitan, which I affectionately called El Crapitan, operating system came out. It did the same thing as Windows 10. It caused a whole slew of little issues. So you don't need to upgrade. Don't listen to the Apple sales guy don't listen to people. The Apple fanboys are like the newest thing's always the best. That's not true. The thing that you have now that works, it's reliable.
That's what's best.
That's what's best.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter whether it's 5 years old, 10 years old. I know people using 10-year-old systems with 10-year-old software. As long as they're productive and it doesn't interrupt their workflow and they can get everything done, then that's the right tool for the job. It's just a tool. Just a tool.
Well, that is absolutely awesome advice. And, that's I can't tell you how good it is to hear that from professionals who, basically telling me, stop worrying over the stuff and just do what works. And that's the key
Set
thing.
it and forget it.
And you can make more money that way, too, because if you pay, like I have done over the years, okay, the video card's causing me a problem now. Let's upgrade to a $300 video card. Mm-hmm. And, oh, crap, now that caused the sound card to go out. Okay, now we got to upgrade the sound card to match the video card.
I'm having IRQ conflicts.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, those were the days.
Yes, indeed. And you spend so many man-hours on it. Actually, on one of the forums on Facebook, on the audiobook crowd, I mentioned this the other day. It's, I did an upgrade on my router, updated the firmware of my router. Well, that caused my Wi-Fi card to die.
Oh my
and
gosh.
then I couldn't get it back. So this conference would have never happened. And I ended up having to actually run a hard wire through my house into my garage to get internet connectivity.
Sort of like those Fram oil filter commercials. You can pay me now, or you can pay me later.
There you go. It took me
you're probably not in the Amazon Prime 1 hour delivery window.
No.
I can get stuff like a router in an hour on Amazon Prime Now or whatever the heck it's called.
Right.
You can't.
No, that doesn't happen here. I got to get in the car and drive 10 miles to Best Buy.
Oh, that 10 miles. Okay, that's not so bad.
It's not so bad. I'm in the city.
I thought you just said to go out and start up the Piper Cub and fly into town.
I used to be that far out, but for reasons like this, we moved into the big city. That's awesome. Well, the leprechauns as you may or may not be aware, I've got several leprechauns. They're brothers that live in my crawl space, and they like to join these interviews with different intriguing questions. Sometimes the questions are intriguing. Sometimes the questions may be confusing. We will let you decide. So the four brothers, Feely, Neely, Boffin, and Berthold, are going to come in and ask a question. And they have a butler. His name is Gerald. He is a troll, and he may or may not join them. We'll see. I haven't seen him this morning, so he may be busy on a project. But boys, would you like to come in? Oh, yes, Mr. Basil. Oh, that's Dan and George. We've seen them on the Vub. We've seen them on that show that we watch, that they do. They're very smart, man. And and I've seen George drinking a beer on that show, and that right there is the symbol of manhood to me. If that's what you're going to do, then that makes you my friend.
You got it.
So, anyway, we have a couple of questions for you, if you're willing to answer them. And it's totally up to you what you do with them, because Basil can edit out any stupid things we say. So, the first question is related to George. George. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, George. The young'un. Yes, that's the one. Okay. Hello, my name is Berthold. I'm the youngest of the four brothers. Those other ones that were talking were my older brothers. And they let me ask the questions mostly because I'm better at it. Anyway, George, what is the smallest studio you've ever built or worked with?
The smallest one, I would say, is so small that at least for me, my shoulders touch the two walls. So once you get in, you pull the door shut, and the foam on this wall is touching my right shoulder. And luckily, the person it's for is smaller than me, so she doesn't squeeze in there quite as tight.
Even as a leprechaun, I'm getting kind of claustrophobic thinking of that.
It's claustrophobic even for a leprechaun, I think. Yeah, that's about the smallest ones I've put together. And believe it or not, the smallest ones I've built are for voice actors who are pretty well known in the industry that do quite well, but they only had small spaces to work with, so we made it work.
So that was because their apartment was small, that they built it small?
But in these cases, they have houses, but that was the only space they were willing to dedicate to the booth out of their home.
So they're not dedicated to the job with all their heart.
Maybe not. Maybe they have spouse issues that might come in the way as well.
Oh, yeah,
so
I can think of that. That's important.
Yes, it is.
Closet space is at a premium in Southern California.
I can understand that. Okay, Dan, here's a question for you. Now, you do voiceover acting as well as teaching and recording and stuff. What is the silliest job you've ever had to do?
Oh. Silliest job?
Yeah, if you've ever had to do silly.
I never take anything serious, so I look at everything pretty silly. I was once the voice of an English language movie channel in Pakistan.
That's kind of interesting.
Which was actually pretty fascinating. I mean, this guy contacts me and says, "We want you to do this thing in Pakistan," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, right, yeah, sure." Somebody's pulling one on me, and I, of course, check up the look on the internet at this company, and sure enough, they're a cable company in Lahore, Pakistan. Getting paid by them wasn't so easy, and and they say, "Well, we're going to send you a page of stuff." And just read all these liners, and and I get a page, 9-point single-spaced sheets, and it's all of these.
You had to read it with a magnifying glass, then.
I did actually, and then it was watch Sylvester Stallone in this and Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie, and I'm thinking, boy, if Osama bin Laden is sitting in it somewhere in Pakistan, which amazingly he turned out to be, and he's watching cable, which apparently he was. He's going to hear this Jew talking about all these Jewish actors. Yes, it'll be fine, as he's sitting there in his cave and he's actually watching Dustin Hoffman and all this other stuff. So I thought it was perfectly okay to do that. So that's an absolutely true story.
That is amazing. So he's sitting there and he's thinking, oh, these guys are great actors. They're great. What? They're what? I'm going to have to blow them up now. But we blowed him up instead.
Exactly.
Good trade. Good trade.
It was.
And you were an agent of the government for that, probably, because it weakened his resolve to hear your voice.
Well, no, I was an agent of Hollywood, sending them Hollywood stuff that will weaken his will.
So there you go. You voice acted him into submission so the Navy SEALs could get him.
That's right.
All right. So, here is a hypothetical situation for the both of you.
Okie doke.
You happen to be in the studio doing interviews one day, and all of a sudden a bright light shines through the window, and it turns out that there's a UFO outside, and he sucks a tractor beam right through the window into you, and sucks you out the window into there. But as you're flying through, you have the chance to grab one thing. What would you grab to have with you on that flying UFO that's going to take you to another planet?
I grab George because he can fix anything.
Oh,
he has a T-shirt that says, "I'm here because you broke something." You're actually wearing it. So.
And then, so I guess if you're going to bring me, I better bring my toolkit because I'm going to need it.
Yeah. If you're going to be in space for a while, you need not only your toolkit, you need your box of adapters.
Oh, yes.
So, you've got to have your stereo to monos and your headphone plugs and your XLR adapters and stuff like that. So I always keep those in my briefcase. So
nice. You are a true-to-heart nerd.
Indeed.
That is excellent. So, and that may very well be the reason that the aliens chose you specifically. You get in there and they say, "Oh, we broke our sound system. Can you please help us? We have a show due in 30 minutes on planet Zifluff."
I was listening to Gonna Get Lucky, and it died, and now I'm not going to get lucky. I need help.
Well,
That
although
would
from
be
that
tragic.
distance, yeah, they were probably watching Lucy, so the time it takes the signals to get out there.
Well, thank you very much for participating in this interview. It's been wonderful. Basil, we give it back to you.
All right. Thank you, guys. And
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you guys coming on the show. It's been terrific chatting with you. And solid advice. And you guys are fun to talk to. And once again, VOBS.TV is the show to watch every Monday night. It's 9 p.m. Eastern and
6 p.m.
5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Western
Yep.
Pacific.
And 7:30 and 9:30 in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And 2 a.m. and
5 a.m. here in
At GMT, yeah. And also, and George and I also offer the service. If someone wants to have their audio tested, we don't charge to analyze people's audio. You can go to George's website, vostudiotech.com, and mine is homevoiceoverstudio.com. I have a specimen collection cup there, and they can drop their audio off in there, and we can see what's going on in their studio. And if we need to do a professional consultation to fix it, we can do that. But the analysis is free.
Collection cup
Yes,
sounds very personal.
it does.
I'm sorry,
because
I was
your audio is
just at
very
the VA
personal.
doctor the other day and had to do a physical, and I'm just getting this picture in my mind. Leave your specimen on Dan's website.
That's right.
Well, excellent. Thank you very much. We'll make sure that people get the word out there, and guys, go out there and watch their show. It's a hoot to watch. A lot of information. The chat room that goes beside the show is a blast to.
It's a show in its own.
Yeah, it's a show in itself. And if you can't watch it live on Monday nights, you can watch the recorded versions of it, which are the same thing, except you don't get to play in the chat room. And there you go. And you guys actually answer the questions from the chat room live on the air quite often, too.
We do.
We do. Yeah, either we do, or if it's for our guests of the show from that episode, then the guests will answer the show.
Right.
Yeah.
We get some of the top people in the industry here. So
Yeah.
it's,
Oh, yeah. It's a
You're not gonna get the
100%
chance to talk to
interactive
them.
show. Probably the only place you'll be able to go to chat with people of this caliber unless you go to a conference and meet them in person. But then they'll be busy, and you'll have to buy them drinks to get them to talk. So,
But we have to do that at our show too, anyway. So we have to feed them as well.
We buy the drinks and the food.
Yeah, that's
So you don't have to.
all righty. Well, we're out here. Thank you guys very much. And on with the show.
Thank you very much, Basil. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise,
Cheers.
guys.
Oh, am I too late? I've come to ask George and Dan a question.
Oh, Gerald, the show's already over. They're gone.
Oh. Okay. Well, I guess I won't ask the question then.
Well, ask us. Maybe we can answer it for you.
Okay. I was working on some stuff with Basil's booth and with his computer and trying to make it run better. And so I have this question for either of them. Well, one of you can answer it.
I just asked a question there, Gerald, and we'll see what we can do. Bertolt, pay attention. Oh, yes, sir, brother. I'll pay attention.
Okay, here we go. What are the main disadvantages of a recursive function call in C in a resource-constrained embedded system, and how may that apply to what Basil's current configuration is between his computer and all of the other equipment? I appreciate your assistance in this, gentlemen.
Bertolt, that's on you, I think. Well, Gerald, this show is copyright 2016 by Sandman Production Studios of Alaska and Basil Sands well, Gerald, we're going to have to look that one up, I think.
Oh. All right. I'll wait. Bye, everyone.